So there's this young woman I know. She's 19. She's fairly attractive, she's fairly intelligent. She has a wide social circle. And among her social circle, because the kind of person that she is, she's not one of these like queen bees that only hangs out with like the cool kids, right? She hangs out with everybody, including this young woman who's an emo, right? Well, she's been several things, but let's just call her emo girl just to make it easy. Now, this is what happened. The emo girl has come to the conclusion that she is trans and she wants to transition, and she's taking hormone blockers to make this transition. Now, emo girl, from what I understand, is about 18 years old. And emo girl is all set to transition because she sees that all of the problems of her life are because of her gender dysphoria. It doesn't matter that she's had other problems that have nothing to do with gender dysphoria, very serious problems, including the fact that her parents divorced in a very ugly manner when she was very young. She's been, ping-ponged between the parents who don't particularly care for her, and they just use her as this weird pawn in this war between the two parents, or the ex-husband and ex-wife. They hate each other that much that's how they treat this poor girl. But anyway, she has a lot of problems. But now she's convinced that gender dysphoria is her actual problem, and transitioning will solve all of her problems. Now, the young woman I know, and let's call her D for the sake of argument, it's just easier. Now, D, she's a fairly smart girl, but she's one of those sort of placid people, go along to get along kind of people, right? But she's not so foolish as to not realize what's going on with poor emo girl. Emo girl has latched on to this notion of transitioning as a way, a cure-all for all the problems of her life, because she feels socially alienated, she feels unloved, she has problems at work, she has depression, she has a whole host of psychological problems, product of different things that have happened to her in her life, but she has focused all of them on this issue of gender dysphoria. And D, who's no fool, realizes that emo girl's problems are not gender dysphoria. When in fact, a lot of their circle of friends, they all recognize that gender dysphoria is not emo girl's problem at all. But here comes the tragedy. Nobody dares say a thing. Nobody is saying anything. Not D, not all of their friends in common. They all have come to the same conclusion, that gender dysphoria is not her problem, that she's just latching on to it in order to make it the cure-all for all of her problems. Emo girl has created this elaborate fantasy that once she fully transitions with bottom surgery, she will become perfectly fine, perfectly healthy, perfectly happy. Everything in her life will be better once she has had this full-on transition. That's what she truly believes. And nobody who knows her believes this. She is living in a fantasy world. But the problem is that nobody dares say anything because they are all terrified of being accused of transphobic. Dee told me about this problem that she was having because she wanted to tell emo girl that the problems were not that she had gender dysphoria. She doesn't have gender dysphoria. What she has is just a whole boatload of psychological problems that started with her broken home. She came to me and talked to me and asked me what to do. And my knee-jerk reaction was to go to emo girl and tell her, hey, you are not gender dysphoric. You are a perfectly normal girl who has a lot of psychological problems. Transitioning, number one, you're not a boy, you're a girl. And number two, even if you go through all this transitioning, it's not going to cure your problems. On the contrary, your problems are still going to be with you. I told Dee to say that to emo girl. And then I had a change of heart. It shames me to say. Yeah, I told Dee not to tell her anything, to let her go through this whole process. I'm ashamed to say that that's what I told Dee. But I realized that Dee's position with her friends and society at large, or her school and whatnot, it would all be very negatively affected if she were to go to emo girl and tell her, what you're doing is crazy. Because what emo girl is doing is crazy, objectively. And the fact that counselors and doctors and what have you are egging her on in this insane direction is just irresponsible and infuriating, especially to someone like myself. I'm 51, I've been around enough, I know enough. I know the difference between somebody who has gender dysphoria and somebody who's just a screwed up kid who needs some peace, some calm, some comfort. I know the difference between the two. Emo girl, she's just screwed up. She's not gender dysphoric. And I think to myself, would I tell her? Would I tell emo girl that she's not gender dysphoric? And I realized, no, I wouldn't. Because if I do, I'm going to be labeled all kinds of things. My reputation will be destroyed. I would lose friendships. And here's the thing, and I was talking to Dee about this, that I asked her, if she were to say this to emo girl, what would happen with the other friends who agree with her? And Dee said, they would cut her out. They would call her transphobic, even though they themselves believe the same thing, that what emo girl is doing is insane. But they would cut her out. This is the world that we are living in. This is the insanity that we have allowed to flower. This insanity where this young girl, this emo girl that I was telling you about, this 18-year-old kid who does not know anything, she is giddily going on this adventure that will mutilate her body in ways that are that they cannot be fixed. They cannot be fixed. She will mutilate her body in pursuit of some idea that is just insane. And nobody is going to tell her to stop. Nobody is going to tell her that this is crazy. Nobody is going to tell her that this is not her problem, that she has other problems. Nobody is going to be her friend. No one. Everyone has a vested interest in emo girl transitioning, for crying out loud. They do have a vested interest, because right now transitioning is kind of cool among the teenage set. They think it's cool. They think it's cool to transition. And doctors, they want to do the operations. A lot of these surgeons, they want the operation for the money, and they don't care about the patient. They care about the money that they're going to get for an incredibly expensive and complex operation whose results are catastrophic for the person. People who transition, they say that 41% of them commit suicide. Yeah, why do you think? Why do you think that 41% of them commit suicide? 41% of them commit suicide. That's an insanely high figure. Why? Because they realized that the source of their problems was not their gender dysphoria, and the transitioning surgeries and whatnot caused enormous problems on top of the ones that they already had. And these poor people can't take it anymore, and they decide to kill themselves. That's what's going on. Emo girl has 2 chances out of 5 that in 5 years she's going to kill herself. And nobody is telling her to stop. They all have a vested interest, because everybody thinks that it's cool. The doctors are going to make money. The parents are going to look so progressive, with their little girl who transitioned into a boy. Oh yeah, it's going to be wonderful for all. No, it's going to be horrible for this poor girl. And everybody is afraid to tell her the truth. And even the people who think that it is wrong what she is doing, even they, so as not to be left behind, even they will throw on anybody who dares tell emo girl that what she's doing is wrong. God. Yeah, I'm a little hot under the collar about this thing because, it happened recently, okay? And it was a conversation that I never expected to happen, I was talking to Dee, and we were talking about some stuff, and then all of a sudden this came up, right? And started going into the details of it. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? I'm an old fart, right? So, I'm not hanging out with, freshman college kids and whatnot. So I don't really know exactly what's going on at that age bracket. I know vaguely, and I think to myself when I was young, what was going on at that age, right? But I don't realize the insanity that's going on, okay? And I told Dee not to say anything, that it would be the smart thing for her. And I feel very ambivalent about that decision, because I recognize that if she does stand up and say that this is wrong and this is horrible and advises emo girl that she should not do this, she will be ostracized. Dee will suffer socially, severe social penalties. And so I feel awful telling her to take the coward's way out, but on the other hand, I realize it's the practical way to go. And I don't know how this is going to change. I mean, I tend to think that actually it's going to continue to get worse, precisely because nobody stands up and says, no, this is wrong. This is the kind of world that we're living in, yeah? Where, because we have no standards whatsoever, we are allowing insanity to flourish, and we're all too chicken, myself included, we are all too chicken to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. I honest to God don't know where this is going to end. I have no idea. I mean, I can't envision it. Will it get worse? Will just more and more young people start to transition? Will more and more young people say to themselves, oh yeah, the root of all my problems is the fact that I have gender dysphoria, ergo, I'm going to transition from male to female or female to male, and my life will be hunky-dory after that. It'll all be wonderful. And then these poor people, their bodies mutilated with even more problems than before, problems that will compound their previous problems, the new problems because of their transition surgery that will make their previous problems seem trivial in comparison. 2 out of 5 of them are going to commit suicide. Is that the kind of future we want for the youth? Is that what we want as a society? I mean, this is a genuine question. Do we as a society want that to happen? Because it seems so. It seems that we're all quietly and in a very cowardly way edging towards the abyss, throwing our children away because we're too chicken to stand up and say that this is wrong. Every fashion, every trend always ends, okay? And this is a fashion, this is a trend, this is just a mania that is sweeping through our society. And it will end one way or the other, okay? I don't know how and I don't know when, but eventually it will end. Perhaps our entire society will be wiped off the earth and replaced by a different society that will look back on our own and say, look how crazy they were, and they will be right. Because we are crazy and we are cowards, quite frankly. We are chicken. And I feel dreadful for the advice I offered Dee, because my first impulse was the right one, to go to emo girl and tell her this is wrong. My second advice, to not go to emo girl and to not say anything and to keep her mouth shut. It's the coward's way out. It'll be good for Dee, but horrible for emo girl. And then also I think to myself that, well, maybe this is just natural selection at work, you know? That the sensible people realize that this is insanity and they keep quiet and they let the crazies go ahead with this and eventually commit suicide. Maybe it is, you know, natural selection at work. Sorry, this isn't like a happy video about, you know, chicks and sex and money and stuff that's more interesting, you know, sexier. You know, this thing really weighs on me, to tell you the truth. I feel like such a for having told Dee to not say anything. I feel horrible, wretched, but see, I know how awful it is to be socially ostracized. I've experienced it a number of times. And see, I'm tough enough to handle it. I'm 51, I could give a rat's what anybody says about me or thinks about me. If I get socially ostracized, fine, you know, I don't care, yeah? I think of Dee, you know, she's a 19-year-old kid, just starting out. And she's a nice girl, bright girl. She's got a bright future. So yeah, I mean, if it's me, yeah, I'd go for it, personally. But a young person today, potentially you, See, if you decide to go up to this person that you know, this person who's screwed up, this emo girl or the equivalent thereof, right? And go up to him or her and tell him this gender dysphoria you have, you don't have it. You just f***ed up because of other that has nothing to do with gender dysphoria. And any kind of transitioning is not going to solve your problems. Well, if you have the balls to do that, good on you, but recognize that you're going to be ostracized. Recognize that people are going to on you and call you transphobic and evil and blah, blah, blah. Fascist and whatnot. Whatever bad word that they have, they're going to throw your way. And do you know why? They're going to throw bad words your way and call you awful things and cut you out and ostracize you because they fundamentally recognize that you are right. That you are right to go up to that confused individual who thinks that they should transition to solve all their problems. You are right to warn them not to do it. You are right to tell them that it's a fashion, a fad that they should not embark on. You are right to tell them that it will ruin their lives. You are right to tell them that they will have a 2 in 5 chance of committing suicide because of the problems of transitioning. The people who will call you names and ostracize will know that you are right. And it is precisely because you are right, precisely because you are right, and you have the courage to say so, the courage to tell people, the courage to tell this confused individual that their decision is wrong. It's precisely because that you have the courage and they do not, that they are going to ostracize you and ridicule you and call you horrible names. Understand that. Understand that. Because they know as well as you know and as well as I know that these confused individuals, they are not gender dysphoric, and transition will not solve any of their problems. What's going on is moral cowardice. This is the age we live in, an age of moral cowardice.